Let's not do that. This is not good. Yeah. This was always going to happen. This was like literally yeah, hi. Yeah, hi. You going to be my ASMR cat? Don't touch my keyboard though. Don't touch my keyboard. This has been up all night. Why are you here now? Why are you touching the microphone now? Yeah, why? Hey Luna. Do you want to come here? What do you want? Oh. You're moving it away. No, don't chew on it. Don't chew on it. Is it meant to be over there? This is what we do. Are you happy? Are you happy now you've done that? Can I move it back now? Can I move it back? I want to watch some videos. Are you going to let me watch stuff? Are you? What are you doing, hey? You can come here. Off my keyboard though. Off my keyboard though. There you go. You made me forget what I was going to do. Let's go look at some of these videos, eh? So I saw that one. That gave me some stuff to think about. I don't really want to watch that yet. It looks like a bit too technical for what I want to start with. Maybe some of these will be good. Like I'm interested in some people's experiences and Luna. What is this? What is this? Boop. What is this? You gotta stop interrupting me. You gotta stop interrupting me here. Alright. Let's watch. This is a short video. It's a short one. Why I'm glad I didn't use Unity. Could this be clickbait? Okay, precursor, this person's been making games for 7 years. So, yeah, not for everyone, but let's see what they say.
7 years ago, 12-year-old me was very bored because my parents put a 30-minute limit on video games. I figured that if I could make games myself, the limit wouldn't apply. This is when I decided I would learn to code. I picked Python because it was the only language I knew of at the time. I installed the interpreter, Googled
Good
some
person.
tutorials, and within a few months of using Python, I started to learn Pygame, which is a graphics library for Python. In the last few years, I've tried messing around with engines like Unity or Godot a bit, and I even participated in a game jam using Godot. When I was 12, I don't even think I knew what a game engine was. To this day, I'm still glad I chose Python over something like Unity. There are a bunch of ways
okay, so they use Python.
And in my opinion, there isn't really
an interesting path.
Fits-all method. Ultimately, the ideal route depends on what you're trying to do. When deciding where to start, there's
this
one
person is
major
remarkably
choice that
level.
People seem to forget about. It's a decision of whether or not to use a game engine. Engines come with a bunch of built-in functionality that allows you to make complex games with minimal knowledge. They also handle a lot of messier stuff that goes into rendering, which is a big deal if you want to do 3D stuff. This is usually done through some layers of abstraction, and you interact with that abstraction rather than using the lower level methods that things like graphics libraries use. If you want to get into game dev and your only goal is to make games, then an engine is probably the right choice for you.
This is surprisingly not clickbaity at all. In fact, they've been like really level-headed and like on point the whole time.
However, there is a bit more to this story than there seems. If this was all there was to it, then I wouldn't be happy with the route I took. One of the major differences in using an engine or not using one comes down to what exactly you're learning. While you do learn the programming language your engine uses, assuming you're not using blueprints with Unreal or something.
Sort of. I don't feel like you learn like the best of C# with Unity, but still.
You're primarily learning to use the game engine and how to make use of its built-in functionality through the abstraction that it provides. On the other hand, if you learn to make games without an engine by using a graphics library or something similar, you're spending a lot more time making your own systems. There's so much to learn that an engine normally does for you, such as the way you store and render a world or the way you handle entities. When you go this route, you'll get to know your language of choice even better than if you had chosen an engine.
I don't think that's like the literal best reason though, because like you can just still, I don't know, maybe it's like a discipline thing, but like even if you're using Unity, you can still learn C# properly outside of that. But yeah, maybe the point is that you habitually don't. I get that.
You'll get much more experience that will force you to develop your problem-solving skills. You'll be more likely to think about how something could be made rather than whether or not there's a library or some software that does what you want. The skills you get are significantly more transferable than the skills you'd get while learning to use a game engine. One of the things that's worth noting here is that it's also easier to go from using a graphics library or something like that to using an engine rather than the other way around. The overwhelming majority of people who get into game development are not able to turn it into a...
This is like the video I watched, I can't remember which one now, the video I watched last time completely really skipped that point, and I even like skipped it because it just like, and I've talked about it so many times, but it just escaped my mind that like the cross-generational thing, having, you know, learned stuff initially in 94 and then kind of relearned it in like 99 and then in like 2001 and then 2005, like there's so much that you really need in terms of transferable skill that isn't rooted in the processes that we use now and the tools that we use right now. Like, I think that is like really, really important. I completely forgot about that last time I was here. But like, stuck in here is a really good point.
Sustainable career. Learning game dev without engines gives you significantly more transferable skills that can prepare you for working in the computer science industry. Not only are the working conditions better than...
I'm not sure what this... oh god, I'm going to cough tick now. I'm not sure what this mythical computer science industry is, but I do get that point.
The game dev industry, but the pay is better as well. As I stated before, if you're looking to get into game dev,
it's a horrible picture.
And you either want to get in with little effort or you intend to work in the industry, using an engine is probably the right choice. There are some cases where there are benefits to
salary
using
picture
graphics
is so bad
that you can't get from engines, but that doesn't affect as many people as you might think. If you want to get into game dev while also preparing yourself for a future in the computer
bearing
science
in mind, they
industry,
use Pygame, not like,
games from the
you know,
ground up may
assembler.
be a better option. So overall, this might be a better option if you aren't 100% certain you want to be working in game dev. As I stated earlier, it's significantly easier to transfer from building games from the ground up to using engines rather than the other way around. So this is the better option if you...
That's maybe like the best point. Because if you're like already good at C++, C#, etc., I really... And all of the requisite techniques behind it, I really don't see it as that hard to pick up an engine. Especially if you've picked up like proprietary engines.
That you want to be working,
you know, like
personally, my
proprietary PS
with Python that I got from using
Switch console engines, etc.
Engine has landed me a job, and I regularly get smaller freelance jobs that pay very well. It also gave me the skills to get into a ton of other projects that have given me even more experience in the computer science field. If you're interested in going with the no engine route at this point, you've got a ton of options. If you like Python, obviously there's Pygame, which is what I use. Pygame is good if you like pixel art and you don't have any interest in 3D stuff. There's also PyOpenGL if you want to get a bit lower level and get even better performance. If you like Java, there's LWJGL. If you like Lua, there's Love2D. If you like C++, there are libraries for OpenGL, or you can use SDL2, which is what Pygame is a wrapper for. Recently, Raylib popped up, which is a graphics library that's available for a wide variety of languages. Like, seriously, it's a lot.
What is Raylib? I'm just thinking about Ray Romano. It's like the Everybody Loves Raymond library. Raylib is a programming library to enjoy video games programming. Oh no, is this possible? There's a lot of... I was going to ask what that FreeBSD. It's got a lot of supported platforms. Is there a demo? There's a like interesting architecture document. Examples. Okay. Is it VR? VR? Is it VR simulator or an actual VR thing? It's interesting. Is there a list of games that use it? Should I try and make a game with it? Could I do hyper-casual games? Could I publish a hyper-casual game with this? Dr. Turtle and Mr. Gamera looks kind of interesting, actually. Should I play it? Can I play it? Is that showing up? Yeah, it is. That hit me hard. Can you see the screen? Yeah, you can. Oh god. I'm gonna get epilepsy from this. Control hits me in the face like a brick. I'm having trouble like tracking this with my eyes. Oh wait, do I eat those things? They're potato chips. Eat the potato chips, avoid the sharks. What the hell? Sorry, I was confused. This console... Okay. I got distracted by this. Koala Seasons? What's this? Do you want to come play Koala Seasons with me? Come on, Luna. Come on, Luna. Here. Do you want to come here? Play the koala game. Come play the koala game. Come play the koala game. You want to play the koala game? I like the music. Please don't do that. Oh god, what do I do? I have no controls. Oh. Oh, so can I push enter as well? Can I push enter? Does enter work? Maybe I'm gonna manually scroll it back up. Oh, there's like... Wait. What? What just happened? Maybe we should try and make a game in this engine, but also like make sure it's like. Do I avoid that? Do I avoid those? That's a bit sad. Koala is dead. I like the art style. It's kind of funky. Wait. I 100% clicked it. Alright, so you can do interesting stuff with this. I should probably keep watching this video, right? What was I up to?
It may be worth considering. I have my bias towards using Python though, since that's what I've used for the last 7 years. I do know other languages, but Python's also the most widely used language in the world after JavaScript, according to the Stack Overflow developer survey. I'm pretty sure it has the widest variety of use cases as well. It's used for web development, bots, AI, data science, automation, computer vision,
it's got its
scraping,
downsides,
and so much more. That's
it's
pretty
pretty
much it
nice.
for this video. I plan on making a video about why Python has huge potential for use in game development in the future and why most of the beliefs about its use in game development are misconceptions. That video will be somewhat of a sequel to this video. This is my first time saying this after 70 or so videos on my channel, but please subscribe if you're interested in that. Hopefully I'll see you guys later.
It's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. What do you think, Deanna? Is that interesting? What do you think? What should we watch next? I think that person was like surprisingly good and balanced, and not just because like I like the premise of the video either. Like it wasn't at all clickbaity. And I thought, like, I know it's only 5 minutes, but I thought it presented a reasonably good, set of arguments for both using like a pre-made like a Unity or not. Let's see this thing with the funky font, the pixel art font. JDH, what do you have to say?
Hello and welcome back to yet another step on my journey to becoming the undisputed king of the YouTube game dev scene. This time we'll be laying
Is this the
down
person
what
in the
is
Minecraft
basically
video?
the rest of the engine for the yet to be named game featured in my last video. And you may have noticed my fancy new microphone. So you can now hear my voice cracks in 4K, but 4K for your
Person
ears,
uses JavaScript and WebGL, so I like them.
16-bit image
Yeah,
48 kilohertz.
Yeah, this is the same person, I think.
Whatever though. Hopefully now that I'm not using such a scuffed setup, my voice won't crack anymore, and people can stop pointing it out in the comments.
I recognize
Anyway,
your
though,
style.
last we left off, we had our little guy here running around his campfire, but he was still missing quite a few things. So this time up, I'll be running down this little to-do list before we can get some real gameplay into this.
This is like, so this is a WebGL engine.
So one of the first things I really needed after the last video were some better debugging tools, so I set aside some time at the start here and hacked in a couple screens that let me visualize collision areas for everything in the level and give me some extra timing info so I can check out if things are getting too slow.
Okay.
Next item up on the list was getting our little guy here to put his fat little arms to use and actually hold something. Since the game is going to send a player hold.
Go back a bit because I feel like it's just largely going back over their own really specific process. I really like using WebGL though to build like simple engines. What is BFXR? Is this what I think it is? BFXR. Oh no, it's not. Oh no, I have been here, but this is not what I was thinking. Flash player. Have not seen this in a while. See, these are the two perspectives, right? There's the how I made an engine or why I made an engine, like the really personal perspective, and then the how to make an engine. And yeah, I'm really kind of interested in the different tone of these. Let's watch this one. Let's see the how to, because I feel this one looks more like a sort of, I mean, maybe they're the same, but it looks more like a documentary sort of format, I guess.
Hey everyone! So in my last video,
Let's see what.
I said I would show you how to make an engine
Let's see.
from scratch, and here it is in all of its.
Oh no! So this is a how I made an engine still.
Of course, there is stuff behind all of these, but I didn't want to overwhelm us too quickly.
I feel like some of this stuff overreaches and is like,
a tutorial or a series,
you know, trying to show the one, you know, true way to do this.
How to get started on such a gargantuan project like making a game engine. It won't be 100% from scratch.
Maybe don't
see we're using OpenGL.
say gargantuan just to like overblow the concept to start with.
Make windows and render the graphics, but we have to do all the heavy lifting. So this is a great way to
Fair.
practice C++. You'll learn a lot about
Maybe.
algebra, physics,
Probably not really.
graphics, 3D math.
I tend to write my worst C++ in engines. I think it's like the worst place to practice.
But to
Honestly, my code
technology and the world at
is
large.
just
Are you
garbage in
excited?
engines.
Okay. So let's look at what all of this amounted to. Okay, here's our little test cube, and all I've done is
Happy engine.
I've made it so that it can accelerate and decelerate in
I like that it's happy.
one-dimensional motion, but it's still in 3D space. So this is all defined in 3D, but right now it just moves along a line. Now, it would be pretty trivial for me to have the same kind of motion if I pressed the left and right keys along this axis. That would be pretty trivial. And then also moving up and down with some other keys. But what we want is for the cube to have smooth movement, so that if we combined up, which is what I'm pressing now, or W.
I feel like this is too personal. I feel like
right,
this is
that the
cool,
cube would kind of
but it's also
arc
like
and have
not the
smoother
type of like
movement.
content I'm
And
looking
then
for here.
an even further goal would have it
Like I
be
want
like
more
a
stuff
third
like
or
the first video. This is really cool, but like, let's see what this little, let's see what this brag video is about.
That's why you have game jams, where you have 2 or 3 days to make a game. But why don't we have a game engine jam? Are you saying that it's not possible
I like this.
to write down an entire 3D game engine from scratch with a functional editor in less than like 30 hours? Well, there's a reason why you don't see a game engine jam. A game engine used to be very hard to develop and involves a lot of things and knowledge. But is it impossible? Well, the title of this video is definitely not clickbait.
I mean, you don't have to do game jams with one person, right? You're allowed to like use
and wrote an
multiple
entire
people.
game engine in less than 30 hours, and this is the result.
Maybe not with the see out hello world bit. I'll pay that. I'm assuming they use like a UI, like a library, like an immediate mode UI library or something. Because surely you'd have to.
And what you're seeing right now is a time lapse of the entire development, and I added comments in the bottom to explain what I'm doing for those who are interested. It's also important to mention that I wrote that around 8 months ago,
Studio.
and this is not my main game engine. That if you follow me, you may know that I'm creating and almost releasing to the public. You may be thinking, why in the world you decided to make a game engine in such a short amount of time? Isn't that reinventing the wheel or not necessary at all? Well, I have 3 reasons why. First one is for fun. Trust me, I have a lot of fun doing this kind of crazy and apparently impossible stuff. It
I
makes
mean,
me happy,
if
so
it's fun
I
for
will
you,
probably keep doing
I
it
see no
forever.
problem with this.
The second reason is because, as I said, I'm actually creating a serious and time-consuming game engine that I plan to release for free in the following weeks. I will not show off or talk about it in this video, But what is important for you to know is that 8 months ago, when I did this challenge, there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to do, to add in my serious game engine, such as an editor with a cool interface and Python scripting, that I simply had no experience in doing it before. And I am personally
that is a good way to write. A good reason to write a quick thing, though, is a really good reason.
Learn something most of the time or all the time, I'd rather grab that thing to do, try things out, fail a bunch of times, and experiment new things by trying it out, instead of grab a book or 10 hours course, sit down and read or watch that first. And don't get me wrong, I do read books,
this is Rush Engine.
and watch courses.
Hang on, how long ago was this? Do they have...
I try things first, and then I figure out why I do that, why things works and why things don't. This is very personal, and I know that a lot of people just don't learn that way, and that's okay. This is just how my brain works. So I decided to take that
as Rush, right? Yeah, Rush.
Opportunity to learn these new skills to later on apply on my main game engine. Had to write a new one because this learning method is cool, but when it comes to programming, well, it also means that the
can't
code
see it for release yet.
Full of mistakes and bad smells because I was learning on the fly. So it's just better to keep that nasty code away from the production branch. The final reason why I did that is because I really wanted to see how many time it takes to create a game engine once you already know how to do that. And I have to say that I was surprised with the results. Back then, I didn't had a lot of experience with user interfaces and embedding Python, just had some notions on how to do that.
So this is like a C++
OpenGL,
core,
loading, scene graph,
using Python, I guess, to send you...
That topic is something that I'm pretty comfortable with. And I didn't
game commands use the stuff live?
So if you watch
Did I knock something?
the time lapse, you will see that I took around 8 or 10 hours to finish the engine itself, and I spent all the rest, like 70% of that 30-hour time, actually figuring out how to invent Python and mainly learning IM UI, the user interface.
Oh, so they did, okay, so they did use an immediate mode library for the interface. This is cool.
Very comfortable and familiar with IMGUI and way better at embedding Python than I was before.
I actually, seriously, in a project once,
if I had to do this challenge again,
spent something like 3 weeks
come up with a much better
trying to work out how to embed a particular,
in a day. I mean,
like, modified version of Python into like a web server. And
actually,
I think an iPhone app
if you want me to redo this challenge someday, or
to try and like
actually host a
mirror the same script results to do like live simulations and stuff. So from a games engine point of view, I can like totally relate to the Python problem.
For 100 people team to do something actually interesting. Well, that may be true in some cases like Unreal Engine 4, but it depends 100% on what you want to do with the engine. There's a lot of game studios out there that come up with a new game made using an in-house game engine, probably even made during the game development process or a week before, and they just iterate over that during the creation of the project.
See, this is where like it's not really an engine.
Some games don't even have a detached standalone game engine by default.
Okay, there you go.
It's even common to see a game born before its game engine. Like a studio create a game, write the code necessary to handle and run that on the fly, and after a few games produced using more or less the same evolving code base, they just say,
should get in touch with this person.
Now we have enough code to call it a game engine. So the amount of time
I definitely feel like I want to make a video about that at some point.
relies on 2 main things. Your
I definitely feel like that's a
for the project. What do you want it to have?
Major point.
Use it for, and most important,
I feel like I've found a couple of people who have not glossed over it, but by and large, it's just glossed over by people.
Is easy, or that everyone can do it in such a
cat hair like
time.
everywhere,
If
just
you never
floating.
created something
in this
like
house.
that before, and you want to start today, don't expect to have a working engine, even a simple one, in a week or so. Even if you are a kinesthetic learner as I am. Because what actually takes time here is learn. OpenGL, DirectX, Vulkan is definitely not easy to learn and understand, especially if you have no previous experience with graphics. math for game engine development is key and not trivial. If you don't know linear algebra, vectors, matrices,
this is,
so
I mean, there's like separate domains too.
It's very likely that you will struggle a lot on your way to make a game engine. Not even talking about the programming itself related.
I feel like they're really balanced. I feel like they're actually like,
and so on.
This is totally not like the stuff I was watching before, which like felt really BuzzFeedy. Like, Guillaume? Is it Guillaume? Guillaume? Therese? Like, I feel like they really, really, like, deeply do know what they're talking about here. And not sort of, like, within a game development vacuum either. Like, they really seem to know what they're talking about. Because I'm actually getting, like, a good vibe from this video.
That learning part takes a lot of time. From weeks to literally
like
years.
They're not,
at least
they're not, like, overblowing how hard it is. But at the same time, they're not, like, underrating it or saying like this is going to be easy for people. I feel like it's unusually balanced.
And before that, you will not be able to archive this kind of result in such a short amount of time. But once you've learned all
this
the
time lapse is hella freaky.
In a nutshell, the experience was amazing. I had a great time, and in a short amount of time, I learned all the foundations about IMGUI and Python embedding to later on apply in my main game engine. Awesome. By the way, if you watch it...
I need to learn more IMGUI as well, actually. I wanted to... Because I've always used... Recent stuff that I've done... Like, I've used HTML. And... I really wanted to use, like... immediate mode now. I really wanted to switch to immediate mode because like I feel like it's just like the better option. Especially because like I feel like I'm sinking a lot of processing time into UI that could be really cheap. I mean, this sort of stuff like has the advantage that it's like nothing's stored, nothing is like taking up long-term resources, so you can really, really go like fully minimal and get like super bang for buck out of it. My first experience actually with immediate mode GUIs was like Unity 3 or Unity 2. Unity 2, maybe? Unity 3? It's like absolute hot trash. And I feel like the problems that I had there, which were actually a result of the Unity pipeline, not a result of like immediate mode GUI, but I feel like it put me off immediate mode for like years, where I was pretty good at embedding stuff like HTML anyway. But yeah, definitely feel like it put me off for like goddamn ages. So I definitely feel now with the way things are though, like, and especially because I do a lot of VR, me wanting to take a lot of pressure off systems, I kind of don't want to be running a HTML parser, an HTML renderer these days.
To join my Discord server. There's a lot of cool people there, and we do talk a lot about game dev and engine development. I will leave the link in the description if you're interested. This engine that you saw the development in this particular video was not published anywhere because, well, it's a 30-hour one-man project.
Hey,
it's
just still publish it, friend.
A lot of cool features, but of course,
be cool to look at actually.
Many others, and the main reason, honestly,
see if I can make a game in it or something.
Since I already have my main game engine.
My Python's pretty good.
That was a project that I made to learn.
Be interesting to see what I could make.
I'm almost releasing the first public release of my main game engine, so stay tuned. The alpha version is already available for my Discord members.
Is there
so make sure you check that out if you're interested. So that's it for this video. If you do have any questions,
I saw the stuff about the Rush engine.
I hope you enjoy it, and I see you in the next
time. I couldn't find it online. I see him making this Rush engine, but like Yeah. Because I'm interested now. Using my engine. How long is this video?
So I'm making a game engine called Hazel, and one of the best ways to actually make a game engine, to develop and add new features to it, is by making a game. Because if you're not making a game, then you're not entirely sure what the next step to making your engine should be. Do I need this feature? Do I need that feature? Instead of arbitrarily just making a game engine, which is probably one of the worst ideas in this world, by the way, for the record. Instead, what you could do is just simply try and make a game, and then you'll easily see what features you're missing or features that you would
certainly
like to add to your game engine to make that game creation.
Yeah, certainly from this perspective, it seems like a bad idea.
Hazel is the public branch of Hazel, as it stands right now, is just barely an engine at all. If you just go to GitHub right now and you check out what is in the public repository, it's barely like a 2D renderer with an event system and like just some kind of basic application run loop and some layers. It doesn't have any tools like an editor or anything like that. It's very, very bare bones. No scripting.
I've got like so many things that I want to like use.
Now I have a development branch that is
as a challenge to see if I can make games in these engines.
It's got like a tools around it and all of that stuff. But what I'm going to do today is attempt to make a game in as little time as possible using the public version of Hazel. And specifically, I'll link the GUID or the commit ID of Hazel. We do need some kind of gravity and simulation there for when we actually interact with the
physics-based stuff.
Giving it a quick test.
Okay, that's what I want to see, the code. I want to see
really
how it
simple
looks.
randomization to these triangles gives us a really nice effect.
This is another MGUI person. See, everyone's like switching to like immediate mode now. It's just like it just seems to be like the thing.
Yeah. And now it's time for us to work on the thing that I've been putting off, the thing that I'm bound to hate most in this entire process, and that is the collision detection. Now, what we have here, the basic collision...
Yeah, I agree.
Hang on, wait a minute. We also need to know what the player's score is, but that's really just a function of the player's X position. Let's try and kind of...
This is how I add in scores.
...into IMGUI somehow,
total
so
afterthought.
We can get our score rendering, since we have absolutely no UI in Hazel, as well as getting the camera to follow the player. And now we're truly done. Here's some amazing gameplay from what we were able to achieve in Hazel. Okay, there we go. An hour, 2 seconds, an hour, 2 minutes, and 58 seconds. So right about an hour, and that's what I've managed to achieve inside Hazel.
I thought you could show me the game.
Not much, I know, but we've got the kind of core loop, the core game mechanic going. The other stuff that we actually need to add is mostly just things like particles and the glow effect and the hue shift.
It's like the first thing you like thought of to add to that was particles.
And stuff that isn't really
I think it looks fine.
Important to core gameplay. Also the gameplay loop and all of that. But I think that in general, if we just reflect upon this specific hour and where I spent most of that, I think that a lot of it was to do with the fact that there is no actual GUI kind of level editor within Hazel. So everything had to kind of be done through code. I had to just play around with numbers a lot and tweak values a lot by actually restarting things. IMGUI definitely helped with that because I was able to live edit values instead of having to continually recompile the C++ code. But in general, it would have been way
That's a real
easier
pain
if
point.
I could
Like,
just
that's a
kind of
real...
place things around
The lack of an editor can be a real issue.
The other thing was the collision detection. Implementing the collision detection was, I don't know, I probably spent like 15 minutes or 20 minutes out of the hour on that. That was quite huge. So anyway, that kind of stuff is definitely stuff that I would expect to add to Hazel in the future. Also having maybe like a scripting language would be quite useful instead of just using C++ for everything. But of course that is within the plan. It just hasn't been done yet. So that's it. Done. Hour, 2 minutes. Kind of not satisfying though, is it? I mean, he had like glowing triangles and particles and smoke and fire particles. I think it's only going to be fair if we kind of just screw the 1 hour and we keep going with this and we see how long it would actually take to add in a bit of a particle system and get those triangles glowing. So the first thing that I want to add here is a hue shift effect to all of the triangles. Now the default texture shader
not sure about your
Hazel
priorities
actually
here,
does
but
support. And with our lovely kind of passive smoke particles out of the way,
the
let's
glow
take
is
a look
sick
at
though.
those engine
I like
flames.
the glow.
I went to colorpicker.com here to just pick some colors that I felt were nice looking, and I mean, it's hard not to tweak this too much because honestly, you could just play around with this like forever. So eventually I just had to kind of stop, and then the other thing that I did was actually make the particles emit from the ship's engine in the bottom there. Honestly, I'm quite happy with the result, and I think this was the most fun thing that I did in this entire game. And finally, just to polish everything off, I wanted to change the UI font to Open Sans, and I just got that from GitHub, and also add some basic game state and a UI like click to start. And that's it. Here we have the finished game. Okay, so with the
I
game
find Open Sans a bit icky, but
a little bit about what happened, and I just realized that I didn't actually continue the timer, so that took an hour and 10 minutes roughly. It's hard to kind of keep track of it, and I did have to like go up and get some more water and stuff. So we'll say about 2.5 hours, 2 hours 10 minutes maybe is how long that whole thing took, just in case you're interested. So I don't really want to have too much of a debrief here because I mean I just gone at this for like 2.5 hours and I'm really tired. But I think it kind of went okay. I mean, we were able to actually complete the game within I would say a reasonable time period, especially considering we had to like, you know, write our own particle system. I realize I haven't talked too much about all of the code in detail just because of time constraints really. I'll have a link in the description below, like a GitHub link to all of the source code for this version of Flappy Bird that I've written, in case you guys want to check it out. If you want to see a more in-depth look, kind of like almost line by line at the actual code and how it all works and maybe how I would do it properly, and you just want to hear more discussion on that, let me know, leave a comment below, and I might...
One point I did think of, like, actually, is like, whilst it helps your development, writing a game like that on your own engine, it feels a little bit backwards. Like, the other people that we've had here have been more along the lines of, like, their base has been like, I have an objective. Like, I've got a game or something that I want to do, and the engine kind of just gets like built, you know, feature-wise as you go to facilitate that, which I think is really different. Whereas the Hazel engine seems to be just a generic engine that's being built, and then like stuff added to sort of facilitate development of the engine. It's like the reverse process. I don't really get like. That's why I don't really get why you'd want to do that versus... I mean, unless the engine has a really, really divergent approach to other stuff you see, which is why I want to make particular stuff, just because it approaches the problem really differently. But I don't necessarily see that. I feel like it's just like still trying to make the same sort of engines we see now. Where it would make more sense to just like have a fairly ambitious game and make the tech for that as you go. Game QR. I had one other thing I wanted to watch. I think that was the one I wanted. Yes. I saw this, and it's like, I want to see what they did.
Yes, at least in theory.
I want to see what they did here. Just because I'm curious.
Online game in, you can obviously do that.
I mean,
let's watch
100%
this.
of the game's code stored entirely on one of these.
As surprising as it is to say, there theoretically is absolutely no reason you couldn't.
There's some techniques you could use.
Technically just a storage medium like any other. It's just as legitimate as a floppy disk, CD, or even hard drive. It doesn't store much data, but it is data nonetheless.
Lossless storage?
Data storage is actually pretty low. You could also manually write out binary zeros and ones or hex bytes by hand. It's not very efficient, but technically you've stored computer data. And while a QR code is most commonly used to store ASCII text, it can actually be made to store binary data as well, which pretty much means anything you can store on a computer you can store on a QR code, provided that it fits inside the size limitations. How limited are we? Well, QR codes come in various standardized sizes, but the largest is version 40, which gives us an absolutely leviathan 2,953 bytes. Yeah, slightly less than 3 kilobytes. It's not much. If you're curious just how not much, this sound from Windows 10, A sound that lasts
Hey, when I was playing games in 1988,
of a second, this sound,
you know, people were like fitting games into some pretty small spaces.
yeah. Or remember floppy disks? The ones I remember are these, the 3.5-inch high-density floppies. Remember needing like 20 of them to install Windows 95? Well, those things are 1.44 megabytes, or
Okay, buddy, you're like
474,560 bytes.
Okay, buddy, you're like
one of those
95.
Store not one, not two, but almost 5.
I remember installing Windows 3.1 on floppy disks.
So, can we really fit a whole game?
And my computer had the 5 1/4 too.
Well, while pictures, music, video, and operating systems do take up a lot of storage space, simple code can actually be surprisingly economical. And while 3 kilobytes is pretty small even then, people have made games.
Let's go back to that. What is that code?
Up a lot of storage space.
What is this code?
Code can actually be surprisingly economical.
What is that code? Oh my goodness. Blink and you miss it.
While 3 kilobytes is pretty small even then, people have made games with far less. Going back to floppy disks, did you know that people have managed to fit games into a floppy disk's boot sector? And if you don't know how small that is, it's only 512 bytes, roughly a sixth of what we're dealing with QR codes. If you can fit a game into 512 bytes, you can fit a game into 3,000. Or look at the Atari 2600. A huge amount of those cartridges could only hold 4 kilobytes, so games had to fit into that or less.
So, in theory, there's absolutely no reason.
What do you mean, in theory? Like, you just can.
If somewhat basic game onto a QR code. So let's do it.
Our first decision is what game to write, and since this is just for science, we may as well implement something that already exists. My go-to simple game is Tetris. I love Tetris, but I've already talked about how litigious the Tetris company can be, and since I'd like to make this QR code available to the public, I ain't going near that. I'm gonna go for the game that anyone who had one of these will undoubtedly remember.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's
right.
Tetris actually feels a bit...
Extremely simple, but still just fun enough to fend off boredom in the pre-smart...
I'd forgotten about this, but I actually wrote like a Tetris game. Was I 14? I was in year 8. It was on PC. I can't remember the details now, but I remember like being in class, like figuring out like how to make a Tetris type thing.
Our next decision is platform, and while it seems obvious to write a smartphone app, since that's what QR codes are usually used with nowadays, I have some doubts that I'll be able to make something within the size limitations on mobile. Additionally, the more locked down nature of smartphones I think would make it a lot harder to get an executable to run from a QR code.
It's got to be like...
Which is probably a good thing now that I think about it. So, I'm just going to make this a Windows app instead, with the idea being that you could read the QR code from the computer's webcam, fitting an entire Windows executable into those.
Yeah, because it had to be like assembler, right?
Bytes. Before we get to that though, I will mention a really easy way you could pull this off. You could just write it in HTML and JavaScript. In fact, just for demonstration, I did. This is Snake written in JavaScript, with some HTML and CSS to pull it all together, of course. Once it's been minified, which basically means removing everything not strictly required, it fits snugly into our QR code size limit. You'll notice I was even able to fit some comfort features in, like writing extra code to draw the snake as long and thin rather than a big blob of white squares or dots, or queuing up button presses so that if you press buttons in quick succession, they'll still get recognized, and giving you one extra grace turn to move if you're just about to game over, just like the old phones used to do. So, technically, we're already sort of done. But it kind of feels like cheating, right? While it is actual code,
I mean, it's legit
URL or something, you still need a modern browser installed, which... Wait, that's not a modern browser, get that out of here. So, yeah, modern browsers, which, let's be honest, are kind of doing a lot of the work for us. Somehow it just didn't feel right. So we're going to make this a native executable.
Still legit.
At first glance, this would appear to be
I do like the idea of making it native, though.
A simple hello world program written in C already consumes 100 kilobytes. But most of this is actually not our code at all. It's all the runtime libraries that the compiler is linking by default. We can disable this with the no default lib option, which does mean that we have to specify the libraries we do need manually, but doing this cuts the file size all the way down to 3 kilobytes. A great start. Now we could probably get it down further with more compiler options, but what I'm actually going to try is foregoing the C compiler entirely and writing this thing in x86 assembly.
Yeah, I think that is like...
Yep, as close to the raw machine code
that's the best possible option.
Generally possible. I touched on this in videos like my Super Mario 64 compiler optimizations video. C code, while it may look technical to the uninitiated, is very much designed to be human friendly. For your computer to run it, it must be
it's a sliding scale, right?
Machine code by a compiler. And while compilers are generally very good at what they do, they're still not perfect, and most importantly, they're not human. They can't really
some of my machine
about the
code,
best ways
so
to
some of my
translate and
assembler.
optimize your app.
I actually don't know if I
They
can.
really do what their developers have told them to do. As such, generally a human will always be able to write lighter and faster machine code than a compiler. Which is why most video games up until the mid-90s or so were almost always written in assembly. The slight inefficiencies introduced by compilers was just too detrimental to performance on the hardware of that era.
Now, I'm planning to write an extremely simple game and run it on modern hardware, so
this is damn sweet.
Isn't really an issue. But writing in assembly also gives us a lot of control over the size of the binary, since we're kind of writing all the bytes ourselves.
So even though I am a lot
To a
more
degree.
familiar with C, this really seems like the way to go. And with absolutely no outside help at all, I soon had an assembly program that uses the Win32 API to make a window, and all within 2.5 kilobytes. Yeah, we're actually already pretty dangerously close to our limit, and we haven't even written any game code yet. I trimmed a few unnecessary lines out and found the file size had jumped all the way down to 2 kilobytes. That's way more code than I actually removed. When I put the lines back, it jumped back up to 2.5. Weird. So it turns out the Win32PE format, which is the format of pretty much all Windows executables nowadays, is by default aligned to 512 bytes. And it's also listed as
this
the
is what I was
minimum
thinking actually in
alignment
terms of...
possible. This made me a little nervous, since it meant we don't just have to get our code below 2.88 kilobytes, we actually have to get it below 2.5, since anything over will round up to 3. I went ahead anyway until I had a white
Could you
dot
not use a
that moved
different
around the
compiler
screen.
with like
I was already at 3
different
kilobytes,
boundaries?
already over our limit with still barely any game. So, is that it then? Well, not quite. 512 may be the default and even the documented minimum, but Windows will actually accept almost any. We just need to override the default in our linker. Unlucky for me, the linker I've been using doesn't seem to have byte alignment options. I was using this one since it made it super
I jumped
easy
the
to
gun
link
in
with
saying
existing Win32 DLLs, but seeing as size is a priority, it looks like we'll have to swap out with another, which meant having to make some changes to my code. Luckily they weren't too hard, and soon we were linking with MSVC. I couldn't remove the byte alignment, I could only reduce it to 16 bytes since that was the alignment of the Win32 libraries I was using, but that still got us down to
60 is pretty damn good though.
2.66 kilobytes, which is definitely an improvement. Unfortunately, it still didn't take long to reach the limit once again. 2.9 is already over, and we still only barely have a game here.
Alright, I have dogs with me now.
You know, there comes a time when one must acknowledge their limitations. Yes, technically, I can write x86 assembly, but do I really know what I'm doing?
Do I know all of the tricks or best practices to make the smallest binaries
I suppose that's the
possible?
thing, like if you really knew what you were talking about, it would be different.
Than the developers of a C compiler do, and I'm sure I could learn them, but then we'd be here for another few months, I'm sure. I decided I had bitten off more than I could chew here, and I was curious to see if a C compiler set up the right way would be able to write more efficient assembly code than me. So I rewrote everything in C, which was actually easier than it sounds. And yep, that pretty much says it all.
So while theoretically a human being can always write better assembly code than a compiler, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will.
So I decided to carry on in C. I'm much more comfortable with it, and I just had more faith that I could write cleaner C code than I could assembly code. The whole time I was keeping a close eye on the executable size, which in itself was pretty nerve-wracking since it was now all at the mercy of the compiler. A single new line of C code could...
Because it's like you really have to learn how the CPU works. And like, you do have to learn a heap of exploits. I certainly know that from like
But finally,
x86 early days, but ARM assembler.
I failed. I got Snake working just how I wanted it to, but my executable was 3.1 kilobytes.
I mean, you could have done it.
2.88. I did write in my comfort features, the drawing code, the button queuing, the brief byte grace period, and I did play around with compromising these things to try to get it below 3.1, but doing that always made the game feel a lot less playable. I know that is the kind of sacrifice you have to make with extreme size limitations like these.
Have you played Atari games?
There had to be more I could do elsewhere before I started cutting code out. Even though this whole thing is just a QR code experiment, I really hoped the game you would get would at least be kinda decent. So I started looking at other avenues of shrinking down the binary. We only needed about 200 bytes or so. I looked into some pretty complicated, unofficial modifications you could make to the PE header, but they all kinda went over my head, and they could also potentially break compatibility with some versions of Windows. It was at this point I started thinking about compression. It did feel a little bit like cheating, but seeing as I didn't want to cut functionality, it looked like it was going to be the only...
How is this cheating? This is how like games on like older consoles worked.
Any choice. Now, I didn't want to put it in a zip because I wanted the experience of just getting an executable and running it. No unzipping or required.
I thought you meant like self-compressing.
There are ways to compress, particularly when it comes to executables. Executable packing is a means of compressing an executable and then attaching it to a small decompressor program that unpacks and runs the original program on startup. To the user, this is completely transparent and just looks like you're running an ordinary app. Compression is heavily used in the demo scene to make really tiny demos, 64 kilobytes, 4 kilobytes, or even 1 kilobyte demos, which I'm showing here.
I look at executable packing as kind of like the auto-tune of the demo scene. Yes, it's technically kind of cheating, but it's also really clever technology and everyone's using it, so you're kind of crippling yourself if you don't use it.
First I tried UPX, since that was the only one I was already familiar with, but it didn't
it depends on how you use it, right?
Disabling it blew our Snake program up to 4.5 kilobytes, which UPX could only shrink to 4. Yeah, ironically, this means compression has made our file larger. But soon I discovered the program I should have been using, the same one that the demo scene uses, Crinkler. This takes the place of the linker in our compiler.
That's a crispy word, I like it.
Swapping linkers.
Crinkler.
This was pretty much a drop in reverse, so I had no issues this time. With Crinkler in the toolchain, our Snake program went from 3.1 kilobytes to just under 1.4. All that Snake in less than half the size. The QR code dream lives on.
I have a feeling if we took it back to assembly, someone who knew what they were doing would be able to shrink it down with no compromise and no compression. But
you could also compress it in assembler.
I think the smaller it is, the better.
Even
it means
like
the
more
QR
minimal.
code can be smaller and probably easier for the software to read. Speaking of which, how do we create a QR code, you may ask? Well, with some of my favorite things in the world, Unix command line utilities. First, I'll use a tool called QR encode to convert our binary data into QR. We'll have to tell it our data is binary since it'll otherwise assume that it's text. And it's done, doesn't even take a second. There it is, an entire Snake game inside a QR
That's a massive QR code.
This is what we've been waiting for this whole time, and we're finally
That is a massive
here.
QR code.
And now for the ultimate test, can we get our executable back? For this, I'll be using another tool called ZBar. It reads all sorts of barcodes, including QR codes, and comes in two forms, ZBar image for images and ZBar cam for webcams. I'll try ZBar.
Does it read binaries? I've used ZBar before, but I didn't know it read binaries.
Tell it that our code contains binary data rather than text.
Obviously you can.
Okay, looks good. And yeah, it decoded perfectly. This executable that we're playing right now was just decoded from a QR code.
That'd be a pretty sick
Now it's
sort of
time
ad
for
campaign.
The ultimate test. The whole point of a QR code is that it can be easily scanned in from the real world with just a camera. So here I go printing it out.
I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Let's fire up Z-bar cam. Ew, gross. Who's that? It took a moment to recognize, but it eventually.
I'm pretty sure you did the first test working right.
Oh. Huh. It doesn't work. Maybe it just didn't read properly? It did seem to have some trouble with the paper not being flat, so I tried to use cardboard to keep it straight. No, it's still broken. What happened? It read perfectly fine from the image, but
did you diff
not
the
from
files?
webcam? Something's definitely wrong. When I run it from the command line, it just says segmentation fault, so it must be getting corrupted somewhere. It was so damn close. I decided to create a new QR code with the error correction turned up. Before it was set to low, I'm setting it to Q, which is
oh, you didn't mention that.
Fit. Error correction inherently requires more data, so there is a limit to how much we can have. I didn't expect this to do much, since QR code error correction is intended more for if the code gets scratched or damaged somehow, but I had to try it. Nope, still not working. This is so weird. How
Yeah,
can
it should
you
be
get code
lossless
perfectly
anyway.
from the original image, but not now. I decided to bring out the hex editor and compare the executables side by side.
Yeah, I was thinking, why don't you
From
diff
there,
them?
It was immediately clear what was wrong. You see this 0A byte here in the original? In the executable retrieved from the QR code, that byte has magically become 2, 0D and 0A. Now, those of you who know ASCII already know what's happened here, but in case you don't, you know how we often tend to break up language into paragraphs or separate lines? Well, computers aren't made of lines. They don't really have a way of doing this internally. So, usually text is stored like this. One long, contiguous stream with a special character where the line breaks go, so that when it draws that text on the screen, for us, it knows how to split the text into the lines that we made. This, by the way, doesn't include
This was binary though,
automatic
yeah?
word mapping, since the computer can calculate that on the fly. This only applies to line and paragraph breaks specifically. This special character is called a new line or line ending, and it's not really a dot like this, it's a control byte that you never see. But what byte that is specifically is hard to pinpoint because not everyone could agree on that. Today, there are only really 2 line endings you'll ever see. Unix-based systems, so Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android, all use a single character called a line feed, which is, in hex, byte 0A. Programmers will know this better as \n. Windows, however, has historically used a 2-byte sequence. They also use a line feed, but it's preceded by a carriage return, 0D in hex or \r in code. So basically, Unix line endings look like this, and Windows line endings look like this. While most software these days can understand both line endings, a handful still can't. Up until 2018, Windows Notepad only acknowledged Windows line endings.
If this is binary though, I don't get why this is a problem.
Would look like this. As such, it's not uncommon for some programs to automatically convert line endings to whatever system you're using. Are you starting to see what's happened? Ordinarily, you wouldn't notice this, since software that handles both will recognize either type, and software that doesn't will magically work now that the line endings are correct. But a snake game isn't text. We know this, but something somewhere doesn't, and is inserting carriage returns into what's actually precise machine code.
Oh, okay,
It's no wonder
yes.
it just crashes on startup. We already know zbar image can decode our executable fine, so it must be something with zbar cam? Some sort of bug, maybe? Well, the joys of open source software allow us to dive into code and see what's wrong for ourselves. And I pretty quickly found that the stood out wasn't being set to binary mode, which basically means zbarcam gave no indication that its output wasn't text, so Windows assumed that it was. Let's fix that up and try it again. And I've gone back to my original QR code for this. Alright, we've got our executable, and yes, there it is. A game that streamed in from a
credit for debugging that, because that legit sucks. That sort of issue legit sucks.
Let me try it out on my laptop, which has never seen this snake executable before. Haha, it's like a magic trick.
So if you ask me, this is unbelievably cool. Sure, it doesn't serve much practical purpose, but just the fact that QR codes, which are usually relegated to some McDonald's website or something, could sort of function like a small game cartridge. I think that's really cool.
The security implications.
Yeah, I have no practical purpose for this, but it's sick.
QR codes could always link to malicious websites, but if you can store malware directly into the code, which clearly you can, that has the potential to be even more dangerous. I can already imagine a code exploiting an Android camera bug or whatever to trigger some arbitrary code execution and steal your passwords and banking information. Hopefully not. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. If
Yeah, that's a great way to end.
Code, check out the link in the description. I have the code, the reader program with the fix I wrote in, and a step-by-step tutorial if you want to play Snake from a QR code.
As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao.
That was pretty cool. Yeah. I've lost my train of thought after watching that. It was really sick though. I really wanted to get content ideas for engines, and I don't know if I have really. I mean, I guess I'd stumbled across some good stuff. I have some good ideas. I guess I have to like watch more and kind of see what the overall vibe is. Because I think there's also like, I also think there's like not a lot out there. There's this one channel. I wonder if this Sparky engine is like Hazel, has grown into Hazel, or if that's a different engine, because that's the same channel, right? Yeah. There's some of... There's like enough stuff out there. But like... Yeah, I want to like see the vibe. I probably want to watch some more of this channel and see what like the design is like. Whether there's real... Yeah, hi. Whether there's a really like different sort of design. Or... Yeah. Or what sort of ideas are out there. Because there's stuff that I want to do and there's stuff that I want to talk about. But I really want to get a vibe for what's going on with what people are talking about first. Let's watch this. It's 3 minutes. See what's good. Yeah. Eurotrash. That's what we need.
So before I make my game engine, I actually have to research. Okay, so I did some research and I have to use this library called OpenTK, and this is gonna be fun. Now I just have to figure out how to.
What is his accent?
Ooh, I have to use Gross Visual Studio. I'm finding it really hard to install OpenTK. Okay, now that I've got it installed, I actually have to figure out how to use it. What I understand from this code is that it's basically just a window size. And this is probably just turning VSync on, obviously. The hard part about
don't know what the... I still don't get the OpenTK thing. Why?
To actually get the library working, so I'm just using a tutorial right now. Okay, so I finally finished the code. I don't know what most of this does, so... okay.
Probably a bad start.
Okay, so if I start this program, it should just, show a triangle. Okay, now it should show an amazing triangle. Please. Oh, that is not a triangle. Now that I got this
sort of
thing,
is.
I'm going to try to do other stuff.
It's just not a...
So I figured out how to do like key things, like when
not an equal one, that's all.
So I'm just gonna try to, make the keys change the color, maybe. I don't know. Okay, it should change color now. It is not changing color. Okay, so I made it so I can change the color of it from black to white. It's pretty epic. Now I'm gonna make it so I can change the actual value of the color by pressing R, B, and G. It's gonna be great. So far, this has been like really hard to figure out, but I think I'm getting there. Now you can just change the color of content, and you can make it pink, and then it just slowly goes to white, and then it's done. Now I just want to make something 3D now. So to make a 3D object is very simple. All you need to do is all of this. So I don't understand this that much, but I'm guessing it's just a bunch of like 2D quads mixed together into a 3D object. But I have a problem. The cube is inside the camera. So now I'm basically forced to do camera movements, and I'm slowly starting to realize that there isn't a position for the camera, so I'm very confused about what I have to do. I did my research and I figured out that I had to use Matrix for look at. It basically is just like the world position, I think.
What libraries are you
instead
using?
of you moving, the whole world moves to make it look like you're moving. Alright, let's see if this works.
Everyone wants to make Minecraft.
Okay, so I've realized that the cube kind of just doesn't look good. It kind of just looks like a pentagon. So now I gotta make some of that shading. Okay, so I have no clue how to do shading, but I'm gonna do it my way. And I'm just gonna make one side darker than the other. So it's not gonna look very
shading,
but at least you're gonna actually know what the shape is. And so here it is. Look how amazing this is. It's okay, so I think that's where I was.
That's not the right
quite a lot on my game engine.
colors.
It's not really a game engine, but I still did quite a lot. If you want me to continue this, just say it was a very fun video to make. Still very confusing to make.
I'm gonna tick this because they're a good sport.
Idiot.
I'm gonna tick them because they're a good sport. Yeah, they could have shaded that. I think they needed to set up their cube a bit differently, but I think that was I think they were over it. Six minutes. 4 months ago, indie game devs must build a custom game engine. Guys, I can't read. Indie game devs must build a custom game engine. Okay.
You should write your own custom engine and
oh my
not
God.
use Unity or Unreal.
The parrot has me sold.
Because of the following reasons, some of which may not be so obvious. This is a 2-part series with the other video link around here.
Dude, I can't tell if you're sarcastic or not.
Number 1. Complete control. You are in the driver's seat and can choose how you wish to make things work. There are many different ways to go about creating
100% not true.
games, and customizing a workflow to fit your personality can make the process more enjoyable. That could involve gluing a bunch of your favorite tools together, creating a scene graph editor, or sticking to code only. It is your workflow, and you get to do what you want. Number 2. Ability to fix bugs.
This is a legit good one, actually. I can't tell if this guy's sarcastic. Yes, but also the ability to make bugs.
When using
so, you can fix bugs that no one else has been able to fix. Like I did that in VR stuff. But also you make a ton of your own bugs.
Existing technology, you may stumble upon bugs that developers don't care to fix. Open source projects also involve significant effort to fix an issue without creating more, and even then, your fix isn't certain to be pulled into the repo. That can leave you stuck with your current version or refixing the issue each time you update. When writing your own engine, you will already know the side effects and likely even the reason for the bug, making it
Look, I got bugs in my own engine tech from 2016 I still haven't fixed.
Far easier to fix. Warning, when building your own engine, you will have to fix a lot more bugs due to writing more code.
That was the thing to say first.
Number 3, complete ownership. The code you write is yours and nobody can take that away, unless you've signed deals with other entities that convert the ownership, which is typical of employment and contract work. Consider the potential impact Epic versus Apple had on developers targeting iOS. Many developers would have been stuck in the final version of Unreal if courts did not restrain Apple against blocking Epic's developer license.
That's a situation that I remember. It's happened multiple times with different engines. It's doesn't get brought up enough.
This would have held back Unreal developers from targeting future iOS devices. Warning, you will always be dependent on something like people continuing to use Windows or mobile devices. Relying on fewer entities to screw things up is a good business strategy. Number 4, skill building. Building an engine requires a variety of skills, some of which need to be understood at a basic level, and others you may need to dig deeply into. The skills to focus on will depend on your project or how you choose to specialize your engine. For me, I am focused on building racing games, and so physics is a skill I'm digging much deeper into.
Okay, so you got
One great thing about learning from building
really
your own
specific
engines
approach.
is that
This
the
is cool.
knowledge is transferable. You will be able to jump into other engines and understand more of the inner work.
Second person, or maybe third, watching this stuff tonight, who said this?
It will also help you
also Parrot.
structure your higher level code as well. Warning, your hand may be forced into learning something you don't know or care to learn about, which may cause demotivation. Number 5, smoother updates. The process of updating your engine from one version to the next can be as easy as you make it. Each project could freeze the engine in place or update to the latest version and fix the breaking changes that you deemed important. The key difference here is that you are the one choosing what
that's kind of
to make and why to make them. I have heard of
that's kind of true of all engines
because of big engine updates. Warning, it doesn't magically solve itself, but you are in control of what and when to change things. Number 6.
Who is this guy? Who is this Tim?
Tuning. Many of the major engines, Unity, Unreal, GameMaker, etc., are great all-arounders.
I like that they mentioned Unity, Unreal, and then GameMaker. Also, legit, good point. Especially early days of VR, where I found that like everyone just kind of sucked at doing VR stuff, unless you like really hand wrote your pipeline like around just VR.
Like all-season tires, they can create most types of games fairly well, but no single type of game amazingly well. By specializing,
I feel like no one's really going to get the tire reference unless you actually really are into your racing, which clearly you are.
In a single type of game or feature, you can build those games more efficiently. My own track builder, for instance, is a set of high-performance summer tires for building racing games, as it is faster at a specific task than I could achieve in Unity.
This person loves their tires.
To innovate and push new game dev practices or patterns further. Number 7, extra income. While this is unlikely, it is not impossible for developers to get extra money from licensing their engine to other developers or companies as it becomes more feature complete.
Yeah, licensing maybe not, but like having the expertise does potentially give you like consulting income as well. Like I feel like that's more realistic than licensing. Licensing is more like a growth strategy for getting like content out. But like the knowledge in like specializing in a technical field though, like that's valuable.
Some developers will open source their engine and then charge for adding requested features or bug fixing. Even without getting paid to add a feature, you could benefit from others contributing code to your engine with it being open source. This can assist your business by saving you time, thus money, with a specific issue or feature. Number 8, middleware choices. With an engine, you may be forced into whatever choices those developers made for systems like audio, physics, etc. In the best of cases, you may get a limited selection.
So true.
However, building your own engine, you can choose to write the system yourself or which middleware to depend on. If you take care and wrap it well, you may even be able to swap it out if you run up against the wall. Say Bullet Physics was giving you issues, you could swap to ODE or PhysX, etc. Number 9.
I feel this pain. This person's clearly had issues with Bullet.
Personal achievement. For me specifically, and likely many others, there is a psychological benefit in achieving something yourself from the ground up. Each
Parrot agrees.
achievement will boost your confidence for future tasks and projects, and taking the path with more resistance may unlock future opportunities like working as a graphics, physics, or engine programmer. Warning, this can be addicting and not strictly beneficial to games or business.
I wasn't sure where you were going with
Depending on
that.
your personality, you may also find similar achievements using an engine. Number 9.5. It is super fun. You get to create a game, and that's what game development is all about. Hopefully along the journey,
Clearly some people do as well.
And at the end, you provide entertainment to others as well. It does not matter what you wind up using to create games, just that you jumped in and got things done. Writing your own engine gives you ownership, more flexibility, and a deeper understanding of what goes on under the hood. Using an engine will reduce time to ship, provide a community to get involved with, and make collaboration with others or publishers easier. Challenges. Building your own engine does not come without some risks and challenges. You will be taking significantly longer and will produce more bugs as you go. It will be harder to find
Certainly the
collaborators,
bugs.
or at least cost more to get them up to speed. Finally, it is possible a publisher will reject you because there is much more risk for them to take with a custom engine. I made another video
That's also
covering
true.
these topics,
The publisher bit, like
why you should use an engine, what I recommend watching.
I probably can't talk about like too much publisher stuff, actually, but that is like a persistent risk factor to the extent of like things that publishers will try and make studios do, I guess.
If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Share it with others considering to using the engine.
I'll thumbsy up you that.
For more game development tips and techniques to help your adventure. Until later, Turtles, have a good one.
This is true. There are many warnings. This is actually pretty cool. All right. I'm going to leave it there, I think. And come back tomorrow.